Welcome to the Friday edition of Once World. And if you are a regular viewer of this channel, then you will know that on Tuesday, which was Christmas Eve, I talked about anticipating Christmas Day, and I talked about shopping and cooking and all those kinds of things. Well, Wednesday was Christmas Day, and I did all those things. And then Thursday was Boxing Day, which we'll talk about in a bit. And now we're driving towards New Year, and that will be the subject for next week. But for now, I want to just go back a little bit and focus on what happened on Christmas Day. So let's get into that. One of the things I have to admit is that this year was not like other years for personal reasons. But when Stir Up Sunday came, the Sunday before Advent Sunday, when I normally make Christmas puddings and mince pies and so forth, I just couldn't do it. I was depressed. And the reasons I'm not going to go into, but they were personal. And so it wasn't about chronic depression. There are people who have depression all their lives, and it's partly genetic and partly chemical and what have you. But it's just something that they have to live with. But this is different. This is what's called situational depression. It comes when things just get kind of overwhelming. There's just too many things piling into your life at the same time. And it's also not like what they call blue Christmas. Like there's some people who get depressed every Christmas. Some of them, it may have to do with what's called seasonal affective disorder, SAD. Interesting acronym, SAD. And depression is not sadness. I want to make that clear. Depression is very different from that. But seasonal affective disorder can happen because there's not enough sunlight. And it happens particularly in very northern latitudes where the days are very short and nights are very long around the winter solstice. And I don't suffer from that. But there are just a lot of things that just came crowding in on me all at once, and I didn't really want to get out of bed a lot of days. And so Stir Up Sunday came. I didn't make mincemeat. I didn't make Christmas puddings. First Sunday in Advent came, and I didn't make an Advent wreath. And so I didn't light my first candle, and so first, second, third, fourth Sundays in Advent, I didn't have a candle to light because I just wasn't feeling up to it. And I did eventually find my way back up and out, but it was tough going. And this is a point I want to make to you. If you have a friend who's depressed, either chronically or situationally, you can't just get them out of it by saying, well, buck up, or smile, be positive, whatever. It just doesn't work. And more often than not, the only way to get out of situational depression is to do it yourself. Is to figure out how can I readjust my mentality so that I feel better. And so I think around the second maybe the beginning of the third week of Advent, I just said, okay, I got to get out of bed. I got to, do some writing, and I've also got to get out of the apartment because, among other things, if I stay in my apartment, I ended up, seeing all the floors that I haven't mopped in the past week, or the laundry that I haven't done, or the dishes that are still piling up in the sink, and just like get out and get some fresh air and get some sunshine. And so what I did was I strapped my camera on and went out, and I started photographing decorations, which are curious in a Buddhist country to have all these. Well, not all, but I mean a fair number of Christmas decorations. And I took lots of photos, and I started thinking about making mince pies. So I made a bunch of them, right? I made a Victorian coffin pie, and individual pies, and mincemeat empanaditas, and then I made various sausage rolls, which some of which I showed you in previous videos. And it's all by way of like reorienting the way my brain is working. Now, I wouldn't say it's 100% successful. I'm still depressed, but not too badly. I mean, I can function. I go out most days, and I've enjoyed my cooking, and of course I make videos. So it's all right. By next week, by New Year's Eve, I think I'll be pretty much back on track, and that's good. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about my Christmas dinner, because I had found an Australian butcher who acted as a replacement for my French butcher, who used to be my provider for roasts. But she closed a couple of years ago. She had a charcuterie right by where I used to live, by the palace, and so I used to go there every Easter and Christmas and birthday, and get something, usually a roast beef, but sometimes roast lamb. And then 2 or 3 years ago, I went to get my roast, and gone. And nowhere else to get them. The supermarkets do not have roasts. They have a lot of things that you can put on a barbecue, big steaks and big pieces of pork and so forth, as well as like itinerant vendors who go around with the meat all hanging on on these special frames that they have on their motorbikes, which I don't get. But they're never very big, But I did a Google search, and I did find this Australian butcher, who I think has been around for about 2 or 3 years, but I didn't know about him. But anyway, I bicycled along. Very hard to find. It's in this real rabbit warren section of the west central part of Phnom Penh. Found him, got this beautiful 2-kilo shoulder of lamb, which I said, right, gonna have that for my Christmas dinner. And it's a kind of a throwback in a way, because in Australia we always had roast shoulder of lamb on Sundays because it was cheap meat, because there are a lot of sheep in Australia. And when I lived there in the late 50s and early 60s, there were more sheep than people. If I remember correctly, I may be a little bit off, but there were about 10 million people living in Australia at that time, and 12 million sheep, mostly merinos. And our butcher used to keep sheep where we lived in South Australia. There are a lot of sheep farmers, and a lot of paddocks with sheep in them. In fact, our house, where we lived for most of the time there, backed onto a sheep pasture, and there were like several hundred sheep in it, just grazing, and then of course the butcher had something similar, and every week he would cull a lamb from the herd and butcher it, and then on Sunday we would have our shoulder of lamb, which was considered cheap meat, and so my mother would put the roast on in the morning, about something like 10:30. We'd go off to church. Church service from 11 to 12. Back home by about 12:30. Roast was done with roast potatoes, and she'd make some gravy and a vegetable of some sort, and that was Sunday dinner every Sunday, except if it was a special day. If it was a Christmas or a birthday, we would have a chicken, and chicken was expensive, and I mean, I had no thought about turkey or goose or anything like that, but our chicken dinners were quite nice, and I've done a video of it before, so I won't go into too much detail, but it was chicken with seasoned onion stuffing, roast potatoes, bread sauce, gravy, some vegetables, and I mean, it was just splendid as far as I was concerned. It was really special, because lamb was what they used to call 365, like because we'd have lamb on Sunday dinner, and then we'd have something like shepherd's pie on Monday, or maybe a lamb curry or something like that. Like the lamb would spread out over 2 or 3 days, and I'm going to do the same with this one. Oh, that's 2 kilos. That's a lot of meat. So it was frozen because it's Australian lamb, and I thawed it out over Christmas Eve. Then on Christmas Day I put it on to roast with some roast potatoes, and take about the same amount of time. I put my oven on 250 degrees centigrade, and the lamb it took about 90 minutes to be pink. And that's very important with lamb. A lot of people in the United Kingdom are usually fairly good about this. People in the United States have no idea how to cook lamb, and they don't like lamb. It's very hard to get. You have to really search for it, and it's hit and miss. And when they cook it to death, so it's gray all the way through. Well, it should be pink, like here. I'll show you this image of my sliced shoulder. And I made a gravy, seasoned with garlic and rosemary primarily, but I also added leeks and shiitake mushrooms. So it was a complicated gravy, but a nice one. Roast potatoes. Towards the end of the roasting, like with about 20 minutes to go, 30 minutes, I added an onion to the roasting pan and a Cumberland sausage, which is a specialty of the Lake District in England, because you're supposed to have 2 meats for Christmas Day. When we had chicken for Christmas Day, we'd always have these little sausages called chipolatas. Also, same as I'm doing here. Put them in the roasting pan towards the end. They don't need a lot of cooking. And my vegetable was steamed spinach combined with sautéed leeks, and then on the side a mint sauce. Now, mint sauce is also peculiar to England. It's not like the mint jelly, which is sweet, that you get in the United States for an accompaniment with lamb. Mint jelly is sweet. Mint sauce is sour. It's vinegar plus chopped up culinary mint. And I have a little jar of it that I got from my Australian supermarket, made by Coleman's, who also make mustard and horseradish and various other sauces that you can get, that you can make yourself, but it's just easier to buy them. So my complete dish, is too much for me to eat. Sliced lamb with gravy and sausage and roasted vegetables and the spinach and leeks and the mint sauce in it. But I did finish it, but it took me a long time. And that was my lunch, although we always call the big meal of the day, in English, we call it dinner. I mean, even though I had it at noon, so, you know, I can mentally think of it as lunch, but it's dinner because it's a big meal. And then I called my sister later in the day. We talked, you know, did a little bit of Christmassy things. And then by the time we'd finished, it was dark, and so I was able to make my pudding. I keep my pudding steaming most of the day. It gets a good steaming when it's first made on Stir Up Sunday, like 6 to 8 hours, and then another 6 to 8 hours on Christmas Day, which makes it really, really dark and rich and just wonderful. So and makes the whole apartment smell of Christmas. And so I took it out, pour on some brandy, set light, and then once the flames have gone out, serve it up with, you can serve it up with custard or crème pâtisserie or brandy butter, or I usually serve it with whipped cream. And you know, that's more than enough food for me. And then Boxing Day comes around. That's the day after. Boxing Day is a big holiday in England because Christmas Day, especially in Victorian times, Christmas Day was a working day for servants because they had to make Christmas dinner for the aristos. And so, the cooks and the housekeepers and all the rest of it all had to work. The day after Christmas, they got the day off. And they got what's called a Christmas box, which was their present. I mean, usually it would be a bonus of money. And so box is kind of metaphorical, I guess. I mean, they weren't going to get presents like Christmas presents. They were going to get money. But they call it a Christmas box, and so they call that day Boxing Day. And nowadays, Boxing Day is a national holiday and a very important one. It's one of 2 days in the year when, if you're an hourly worker, your boss is required to pay you triple pay. The other day is Good Friday. And Christmas Day isn't even. I think you get maybe you get 2.5. Maybe I don't know. I was never an hourly worker at that time of the year. But you get Boxing Day is like sacrosanct day off. Although these days they tend to have sales and whatnot, so it's all different. But in the past it was mostly a day for sporting events, and particularly fox hunting, which is really controversial these days. I'm not sure what the law is. They've outlawed it for a long time. I'm not sure whether they've brought it back or not. It's was it Oscar Wilde who said that fox hunting was the unspeakable chasing the uneatable? But people go out for walks, for hikes. We used to sometimes go tobogganing because it was very snowy in New York, and my friends in various places would carve toboggan lanes out of their hillsides where they lived, and we would do that, or just go walking. And then the day after Boxing Day, 27th, that's today, is St. John's Day. St. John the Evangelist, not St. John the Baptist. That's in the summer. But so this is my feast day, I guess. And we're going to move on to Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve, and I'm going to talk about that on Tuesday, which will be New Year's Eve. And that's when I look back over the year that passed and forward into the year to come. But that's in the future. For now, please tell your friends about my videos. please like, please subscribe, and I wish you a very pleasant weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday.